I texted her as soon as we landed. Flight landed. Routine. We'd been together for years. I always let her know the moment I was back in the country. Her replies used to have heart emojis, then just, can't wait, then just, K. This time it was, don't come home, 3 words. No punctuation. No follow-up. I stared at the screen like it would change. It didn't. The seatbelt sign was still on when I reread it 3-4 times. My seatmate was already reaching for the overhead bin. I didn't move. She had never said anything like that before. Not even when we fought. We didn't fight much, but when we did, she was the one who wanted space. She'd go for a drive, sleep on the couch, turn cold. But she never told me not to come home. That sentence, it wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It felt like a lock clicking shut. I didn't reply. I didn't ask what she meant. I just got my bag, walked off the plane, and took the train home in silence. I replayed the last week in my head. My trip had been boring, work heavy, nothing suspicious. I sent her pictures. She sent me selfies, video calls, light talk. Everything seemed fine. I couldn't find a crack. Nothing pointed to this. When I reached the apartment, the hallway lights flickered as they always did. The elevator groaned like it always had. Everything looked normal, until my key turned. The door was unlocked. Inside, the place looked wrong. Not trashed, just abandoned. Like someone had tried to erase their presence in a hurry. The living room was cold, silent. My jacket, the one she always borrowed, was missing from the hook. The candle she loved was gone from the coffee table, but the melted wax ring remained. A shadow of what had been there. I stepped further in. There were no signs of a break-in. No chaos, just absence. On the kitchen counter sat a single note, scribbled in green marker. Dad, our wallet. I recognized the handwriting. Her niece had stayed with us last fall and left a dozen similar notes on the fridge, under pillows, inside books. This one must have been left behind by accident. It meant nothing, but in that moment, it felt like a message. A taunt, a whisper from a vanished life. I opened the fridge. Empty except for a bottle of almond milk I didn't buy. Its expiration date had passed while I was abroad. She hadn't even bothered throwing it out. There was no other note. No explanation. Nothing to suggest what I'd done wrong, or what she had. Just silence, and the distinct smell of a citrus cleaning agent I never used. Sharp, artificial, covered something. The TV was gone. So was her laptop, and 2 of the suitcases. Her coat, the red one I gave her for her birthday, missing. Her absence wasn't quiet. It was deliberate. Fast. Clean. I walked into the bedroom. The sheets had been stripped. Our framed photo was still on the dresser, but turned face down. Not shattered. Not removed. Just flipped. Like it had become something to hide. The pit in my stomach grew. This wasn't a breakup. This wasn't a cold-footed fiancé rethinking things. This was an extraction. And I didn't know who helped her do it. The ring was still in my carry-on. I hadn't proposed. I'd booked a place in the Catskills for next weekend. Cabin, fire, ring box hidden in my coat pocket. I'd even rehearsed what I would say. I pictured her face when I'd first shown her the listing. She said, "Looks perfect." Now, she was gone before I even unpacked. She hadn't asked for space. She hadn't asked for time. She'd asked for one thing. Don't come home. But I was home. And everything in my body told me I was now somewhere I didn't belong. I sat on the floor for a while. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just thought. Then I stood up. Looked around. She wanted distance. She was going to get silence instead. Not passivity. Not weakness. Silence. Because whatever this was, this abandonment, this erasure, I wasn't going to chase her. I was going to understand it. And I was going to make sure she regretted thinking she could disappear without a trace. That first night I didn't sleep. I lay on the bare mattress staring at the ceiling fan, letting it spin the silence back at me. My suitcase sat half unzipped by the door. I didn't bother unpacking. There was nowhere to put anything. Around 3 a.m., I started listing everything she took. 2 suitcases. The throw blanket from her grandmother. Things with meaning. What she left behind. A reminder for a dental appointment I didn't remember booking. Useless. I knew what she took, but I was more interested in how quickly she did it. That apartment had no freight elevator. No back door. Moving out took effort. It took planning. Which meant she decided to disappear before I ever got on that plane. That made me rethink the last month. 2 weeks before my flight, she'd asked about my schedule. Twice. She never used to. She'd asked when I'd leave, when I'd land, if I had any layovers. She said she was worried about me getting stuck overseas again. At the time, it felt sweet. Now it felt like a thief confirming your vacation dates. I made coffee the next morning just to have something warm in my hands. The apartment was colder than usual. I stared at the steam and thought about the week before I left. How she'd been extra affectionate, touchy, present, like someone covering up a mess. That's when I remembered something strange. 3 days before my trip, I'd woken up at 4 a.m. and heard a thud in the kitchen. She wasn't in bed. I found her fully dressed, barefoot, putting something in the trash chute. She said she knocked over a wine bottle and didn't want it to smell. I believed her. She smiled too naturally to be lying. Now I wondered what she'd actually thrown away. By noon, I was at the bank. We had a joint savings account, meant for wedding costs. Venue deposit, catering, the works. I hadn't checked it since I left. I logged in from my phone. My jaw tightened. $16,750. Withdrawn in 3 transactions. Dates: 1 before I left, 2 while I was gone. She hadn't even touched our checking account. Just the savings. The account under both our names. The one I'd built month after month while she contributed what she could. That account had taken me a year to build, and she drained it in 10 days. I went to the branch to freeze it. The banker, a polite man in his 50s, asked if I wanted to file a dispute. I said no. Not yet. Let her think I hadn't noticed. Let her feel safe. I called her sister next, just to hear her voice. Just to see if she sounded strained. She didn't pick up, but I got a text 15 minutes later. Just one line. She needs time. Please don't make this harder. I stared at that message longer than I should have. Harder? I'd been blindsided, left without warning, robbed, and her camp was already asking for grace. The fact that her sister replied meant she wasn't off the grid. She wasn't running from danger. She was hiding from consequences. By evening, I started searching. I wasn't going to follow her, but I would know what I was dealing with. I checked her location history from our shared cloud account, one she didn't realize I still had access to. There was a single ping from 2 days ago. A neighborhood I didn't recognize. East Side. Upper-class condos. Expensive. Nothing since. I screenshotted the address. Didn't go there. Not yet. I wanted to know who else knew. Who helped. Who kept quiet. That night, I went through our photos. Not out of nostalgia. I wanted patterns. I looked at timestamps, backgrounds, who took the photo, who was cropped out. One image caught my eye. Us at a dinner last month. The waiter had accidentally captured a man in the background. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at her. The same man appeared in another photo from a different night. 2 weeks apart. Different restaurant. Same look. He wasn't smiling. He was watching. I zoomed in. And my stomach turned. Because the shirt he wore? I'd seen it before. In our laundry bin. 3 weeks ago. I hadn't thought twice. Now I couldn't stop thinking. She didn't just leave. She had help. And now I had a face. The man in the photo had a forgettable face. That was the danger of him. Clean-shaven. Average build. Generic haircut. But the way he looked at her in those 2 photos wasn't generic at all. He looked like someone watching something he believed he owned. I printed the pictures. Old-fashioned, I know, but I needed to see them in my hands. Needed to stare at them like puzzle pieces instead of pixels. In both photos, she was laughing. Real laughs, head thrown back, hand on my shoulder. The performance of someone fully engaged in the moment. But his eyes weren't watching us. They were watching her. Watching the way she touched me. That told me one thing. I wasn't the threat. I was the placeholder. I remembered the shirt. Pale blue, small geometric pattern, slim fit. It wasn't mine, but it had been in our bin. I'd pulled it out thinking she'd bought something new for me. I'd even tried it on, too tight. I tossed it back in and forgot. Now I knew it had never been meant for me. It hadn't even been hidden. Just there. As if he'd been that comfortable walking into my life. I needed a name. Not to confront him. Not yet. I just wanted to know how deep this went. If he was a coworker, a neighbor, someone from her past. If he'd sat at our table, shaken my hand, smiled while stealing what wasn't his. I opened her old laptop. She hadn't taken it because the screen was cracked and it overheated after 15 minutes, but it still booted. She used it for Pinterest and shopping. An email. The password hadn't changed. Same one she used for everything. Her niece's birthday, backwards. The inbox had been cleared. Too clean. She'd wiped it. Not just deleted. Wiped. But she missed one thing. Promotions folder. Hundreds of junk messages. Shopping sites, newsletters, digital receipts. Buried in that mess was an e-receipt for 2 movie tickets. Dated 5 weeks ago. She told me she was with her sister that night, helping plan a baby shower. I clicked on the receipt. 2 seats. Back row. 8:45 p.m. No name for the second ticket, but I had the order number. I called the theater. Said I was trying to confirm my previous purchase for tax purposes. Sounded ridiculous, but the girl on the phone didn't care. She looked it up. I asked who picked up the tickets. She said, it was a guy. Tall. Glasses. Brown leather jacket. I asked if he used a rewards account. She paused. Yeah, actually. She gave me the name on the account. Not his name. Hers. That told me he was using her profile. Or she was using him to book things under her identity. Either way, he was close enough to access her accounts, close enough to walk into a theater, claim tickets on her behalf, and not raise a single question. I stared at the printouts again. One of the photos was taken on a street corner. A reflection in a window caught something behind them. Another man. Older. Bearded. Standing just a little too close. For a second, I dismissed it. Coincidence. A pedestrian. But I kept looking. He showed up in a second photo. Different angle. Same man. Same posture. Watching. And suddenly I realized, this wasn't one man. There were 2. One in the relationship. One in the shadows. One she shared a laugh with. The other she walked past without glancing, as if he were a stranger. But her body language changed when she passed him. Straightened. Tightened. Like someone who knew she was being observed. I checked her social media. Inactive. But I search-tagged photos. 2 posts from friends. Both from that same week. She hadn't untagged herself. One post was at a wine bar. In the background, near the edge of the frame, the older man. Again. Same coat. Same distance. Same cold gaze. Suddenly, the story started to shift. This wasn't just betrayal. It was surveillance. And I wasn't the only one being lied to. Whatever she was doing, whatever they were, there were rules, roles. And now I was tangled in something bigger than infidelity. I saved the images, marked the times, tracked the pattern. Because if she thought she'd vanished clean, she hadn't. She'd left behind footprints, and I was learning to read them. I didn't leave the apartment the next day. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want anything disturbed. I needed to live in her ghost a little longer. Needed to trace her path backward before the trail went cold. I lined the photos up on the dining table. Printouts of the man from the restaurant, the 2 images of the older man in the background, the blurred reflection in the cafe window. All circumstantial. All too clean. Then I went to the receipts. She used to let me handle most of our bills, but she liked online shopping. Little indulgences. Sometimes she forgot she used my email as her secondary contact. I checked it. A shipping confirmation caught my eye. Delivered while I was away. Addressed to her, but not to our apartment. Different zip code. Luxury tower. Midtown. Expensive. The name of the building jumped out. The Langston. I googled it. Private entry. Concierge service. Monthly rentals available. No questions asked. Exactly the kind of place someone would use if they were trying to stay in the city without being found. Or if they weren't trying to disappear, just hide in plain sight. I called the building, asked for her name, said I was her fiancé trying to deliver a package. The receptionist hesitated, then said, "Sorry, we don't have anyone by that name on our current tenant list." I thanked her and hung up. She was lying low, or she'd used another name. But the item was delivered, meaning she'd been there, at least long enough to receive a package. I dressed and went to the building. The lobby smelled like expensive leather and new carpet. I didn't go to the desk, just waited in a corner seat, pretending to text. I watched residents come and go, watched delivery men bring in bags, looked for the shape of her. Didn't see her. But at exactly 4:27 p.m., a man walked through the front entrance. Tall, black coat, glasses. The same man from the restaurant. He scanned a key fob, nodded to the doorman, and disappeared into the elevator. No hesitation. He belonged there. I waited 20 minutes. Then I left. I went straight to the cafe down the block, bought the cheapest coffee they had, and sat by the window facing the building. If he came out again, I wanted a photo. He didn't. But someone else did. The older man. Short beard. Peacoat. Looked straight ahead. No phone, no distraction. Just walked out like he had a purpose. Didn't glance left or right. I took a photo. Followed him with my eyes. He walked 2 blocks east, then turned and entered a car, a black sedan, idling curbside. Not a rideshare. No app. No logo. The car pulled away slow and quiet. I sat there for 10 more minutes, coffee untouched. Then I understood something I hadn't until that moment. They weren't just helping her leave me. They were watching her too. Which meant this wasn't just about a man she was cheating with. This was something else. Something structured. Organized. I went home and started cross-checking everything. His face, his posture, the car, the tower's tenant photos. The building's social media page had ribbon-cutting events, community mixers, useless fluff, but sometimes revealing. There, in the background of a catered rooftop event, I found him, standing at the railing, talking to a woman whose face I couldn't see. He wasn't smiling. Neither was she. But her red coat matched the one that disappeared from our apartment, and on the table beside her wine glass was a leather-bound planner she used for years. I recognized the gold clasp. She was there. Not hiding. Just somewhere she thought I'd never look. I zoomed in on the man's name tag, half obscured by his lapel. Only one word was fully visible. Manager. That night, I didn't sleep again. She hadn't left the city. She hadn't run off with someone. She'd moved, under supervision, into someone else's structure. And if this was her backup plan, then she had been planning my removal for months. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I wanted comprehension. I wanted to know how far this went, how long it had been happening under my nose, how many people had smiled at me knowing everything I didn't. I wanted to understand the shape of the betrayal, not just its edges, but its depth. I went back to the bank first thing the next morning. I asked for a full printout of the savings account's transaction history from the past 6 months. 2 tellers looked at me like I was crazy. The third gave me what I needed. What I found made my hands go cold. The 3 large withdrawals weren't the only ones. There were smaller ones. Consistent. Weekly. Starting 5 months ago. Always under $500. Always from ATMs on the east side. Nowhere near our apartment, or her usual routines. The pattern was surgical. I did the math. In total, she'd taken just over $19,000. That account had been intended for our wedding. She had bled it dry in the background of our life together. Quietly. Methodically. Like someone siphoning fuel from a car they planned to abandon. On impulse, I checked our old group chat, me, her, and her college friend Sarah. We used it occasionally to plan group trips, holidays. I hadn't opened it in weeks. There was a message from Sarah, 2 days old. Is it true you guys postponed the wedding? She said something about needing space? Postponed? We hadn't even announced a date. I typed a reply, paused, then deleted it. If Sarah believed there had been a conversation, that meant my fiancé was laying groundwork, spinning a version of the story that made me look like the one pulling away. I opened our joint wedding planning doc, still shared. She hadn't removed my access. I scrolled down to the budget tab. One line caught my eye: venue deposit, refunded. The venue she chose. The one she cried about when we toured it together. Non-refundable deposit. I called the venue. Said I needed to confirm our booking. They asked for her name. I gave it. The woman on the phone was polite, but firm. There is no active booking under that name. I asked when it was cancelled. She said 3 weeks ago. The refund went to a different card than the one we used. A new one. I hung up and sat on the floor. 3 weeks ago, she told me she was finalizing menu choices. She lied while I packed for my trip. And then it clicked. The timing. She cancelled the venue, drained the account, ghosted me. All while I was 5,000 miles away. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional chaos. It was scheduled. It was the execution of a plan. That night, I pulled out the notebook she'd accidentally left behind, spiral-bound, torn cover, filled with doodles and grocery lists. One page stopped me cold. It was a list of names, first names only. Some I recognized, her coworkers, a couple mutual friends. But next to each name were 2 columns, told and untold. Checkmarks, dashes. The column headers were written in ink darker than the rest. Told, untold. She'd been managing narratives, prepping exits, deciding who got which version of the truth. Some names had comments next to them. He'll take her side no matter what. Unreliable. Will leak. Avoid confrontation, emotional. Under my name, she hadn't written anything. Just left it blank. I stared at that line longer than I should have. I didn't know what was worse, that she'd calculated every angle of her departure, or that I wasn't even a factor in the part where people needed convincing. I wasn't someone to be lied to anymore. I was someone to be erased. And maybe I could have accepted that if she'd run off with some guy who made her laugh harder than I could. If she'd fallen in love and gotten scared and chosen cowardice. But this was strategy. This was theft. Of money. Of truth. Of the life we were supposed to build. And I finally saw it clearly. She hadn't just left. She'd planned my exit from her story. So I started planning hers from mine. I waited 5 more days. Not because I needed time to think. I'd done plenty of that. But because I wanted her to believe I wasn't coming. Let the silence sink in. Let her relax. Let her stop checking the peephole. Then I texted. You left something here. You should come get it. She replied within 20 minutes. What is it? I didn't answer right away. Made her wait. Then I typed. Come and I'll show you. She said she'd be there the next day, late afternoon. Alone. It was the first direct contact since she vanished. I spent that morning clearing the table, laying everything out. Bank printouts, photo stills, receipts, the notebook she'd left behind. I didn't need theatrics. I just wanted it all in front of her, clean and undeniable. When she walked in, she didn't look scared. She looked composed, like someone entering a meeting they'd rehearsed 100 times. She glanced around, then met my eyes. You look tired, she said. I didn't answer. She looked at the table. Her eyes paused on the notebook. I didn't think you'd find that. I still said nothing. She moved closer, studying the evidence like she was trying to find a flaw in my math. Her face didn't shift, not even when she saw the ATM logs. You've been busy. She said it like I'd been snooping, not uncovering a crime. I want to hear you say it, I said finally. She gave me that half smile she used when she thought she was the smartest person in the room. It used to charm me. Now it made my hands tighten at my sides. Say what? That you planned it. That you drained the account. That you lied every step of the way. She didn't deny it. Didn't blink. She just pulled out a chair and sat down. I was never going to marry you, she said. You weren't going to see that until it was too late. There it was. No excuses. No tears. Just strategy, spoken out loud. You rehearsed that line? I asked. No. But I figured you deserved to hear it. I nodded slowly. Let it sink in. You had help, she shrugged. People help people they believe in. The man from the restaurant. The one in the tower. Another shrug. I'm not going to explain their lives to you. Who's the older man? That broke the surface. Just for a second. Her fingers curled. Her jaw stiffened. Not your concern. I think it is. Since you used me to pay your exit fee. She stood up, suddenly impatient. I'm not going to apologize for doing what I had to do. Had to? I stepped forward. You siphoned 20 grand, vanished, fabricated stories about a postponed wedding, and staged your exit with someone waiting in the wings. That's not had to. That's design. She turned to leave. I blocked the door. Calm. Still. Not yet. What more do you want from me? I looked her in the eye. Accountability. That landed. Not hard. Not painful. But visible. Like someone realizing the test wasn't multiple choice. I didn't think you'd figure it out, she said finally. I know. I thought you'd just move on. I nodded once. That's the part that's coming. She looked around. Her eyes moved to the framed photo still face down on the dresser. Her voice dropped. Are you going to tell anyone? I don't need to, I said. You already did. Every lie you told on your way out, they'll unravel. One call, and they all fall in a line. She swallowed. You're not going to forgive me, are you? No, I said. And I'm not going to forget either. That's the difference. She left without looking back. I didn't stop her. I waited 5 minutes, then called the fraud unit at my bank, reported the transactions, sent in the supporting documents. I gave them her full name, address history, and told them which accounts to flag. Then I emailed the venue, attached proof of the stolen funds, told them to note the booking fraud and confirm that I'd never authorized the cancellation. By nightfall, her backup plan was in flames. I didn't want to ruin her, but I wasn't going to let her vanish clean. No one erases me quietly. Not without smoke. I expected her to disappear again. After that final meeting, I figured she'd go underground. No calls, No texts, just radio silence. It fit her pattern. But 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name on the envelope, the way she used to write it on our grocery lists, with a little underline that curved at the end. Inside was a single sheet of paper. If you're reading this, you already burned the tower. I thought you might. I hoped you wouldn't. But you're smarter than I gave you credit for. I was being watched, too. Not just by you. I read it 3 times. Every line was careful. No confessions. No names. But she mentioned them 4 times. Vague. Chilling. Almost like a warning. I checked the mail envelope again. It had been stamped from a nearby city, 2 hours away. A place she had no connection to, as far as I knew. That night, I went back over everything. The tower. The man with the glasses. The older man. The money. The cancellations. The notebook. Then I noticed something strange. One of the images I'd pulled from her social media, an old post from over a year ago, had a location tag. Langston Gala, summer preview. Same tower. Same building. Dated 15 months before our engagement. And standing in the background, in the same black coat and glasses, was the man from the restaurant, 15 months ago. Before I ever knew he existed. Which meant he wasn't new. He'd been around long before I thought we were serious. I scanned our timeline. Dates didn't match up. That trip she said was for work? The one where she came back glowing? That was the week of the gala. And suddenly, everything slid into place. He wasn't the man she ran to. He was the man she was already with. Which meant, I was the other man. Her relationship with me hadn't ended when she met him. It had begun while he was still in the picture. I was the lie. The cover. The clean, stable future she flaunted publicly while negotiating a shadow deal in private. I thought she'd left me for someone else. But the truth was worse. She'd only ever been partly with me. I was the camouflage. And when I stopped being useful, when I started asking questions, planning a wedding, pulling her fully into the light, she initiated the exit plan. Not because she wanted to run to him, but because she was never planning to stay with me in the first place. The betrayal hadn't started when I left the country. It had started before she ever said yes. Everything after that had just been performance. I sat with that truth for a long time. It didn't make the theft sting less. It didn't fix the lies or the friendships she'd shattered on her way out. But it reframed everything. She hadn't broken our life. She just ended her role in a version of it she never believed in. I filed the fraud report. I followed up on the venue. I gave everything I had to the bank. I watched her accounts freeze, her access vanish, her backup options dry up. But I didn't pursue her anymore. Because revenge, in the end, wasn't the win. Survival was. I moved out 2 weeks later. New city. New lease. No shared accounts, no social bridges she could walk across again. I didn't tell anyone where I went, because she wasn't the only one who could disappear. She left to vanish from my life. I left to rebuild one that never included her. And for the first time in months, the silence finally belonged to me.